You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
We're doing good. The first couple injury dominoes have fallen after preseason week number 2. So definitely some fallout there. Kudos to everyone who sat back and took James Robinson 2 to 3 rounds later than Travis Etienne. You now have yourself a top 20 running back for at least the foreseeable future until, whatever happens there in Jacksonville. I don't know if they'll be running the ball a whole bunch, but
come out.
They put him on. It's a Liz Frank sprain. They put him on IR. At least 12 weeks.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, yep, we had some interesting stuff going on there. Guys, we also have a very special guest coming to us tonight as well, all the way from Detroit. It's Chris, the Beast from Detroit, at DetroitBeastie on Twitter. You can follow him there. Chris, how you doing?
I'm great, thank you. And I can't believe I didn't notice this when we were chatting before you went live, but Kevin, to me, looks like he's in some sort of institution in a padded room behind him. He needs a straitjacket, and we're good to go.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Oh, the good old basement there. I love it.
Hey, before we get going, and I know Kevin was talking about, the injury news and the ETN stuff, and there's other stuff that's, I'm sure, coming out still, even as we're recording this. The best news was our Lord and Savior, Carson Wentz, back on the field, doing cuts and running, and nothing to worry about. Much ado about nothing.
This is one of the few times I am on the same page as you, Alex, because I have high hopes for that Indianapolis Colts wide receiving core. So I need Carson Wentz to stay intact to fulfill my prophecy in the preseason.
I was going to say, Kevin, you've got you had some very bold takes there about that wide receiver core. So if he was going to miss some significant time, that those hopes got dashed there. But it's looking like he's still going to show up week 1 and play is what I've been seeing on the reports.
I mean, did you guys see him at the practice? He was running around looking like it was any time before. So, I mean, he looked fine, cutting and running and throwing. I guess I didn't see any throwing, but he was moving around just fine.
Well, and the truth is he needs to, guys. Like, the Indianapolis Colts schedule is brutal.
Yes.
And it really is from start to finish. There's not really like a 2 or 3 week window like most teams have where you think, okay, we can get healthy, we can take a breath, we can regroup and kind of figure out our situation. The Colts schedule is nasty, and it is from week 1 all the way through week 17. They got they pissed off someone in the commissioner's office because they did not get any favors handed to them this year other than Jacksonville, which they have to play twice.
And I must say, my Michael Pittman Jr. shares, they were high, they dipped, and they got really low, and bam, we're back on the moon again with Michael Pittman. So welcome back, Carson Wentz. I don't think I've ever said that in my life.
As long as we get Q back there at center, everything's going to be okay there for the Colts.
Correct.
Yep. So we'll have to see what that one looks like. I haven't heard anything there. Lots of fun going on with the preseason. Make sure that you're watching, following all the camp news. Adam Troutman was another guy that went down, seeing some positive things come out on that injury report. It hasn't fully been released yet, but part of the problem that you've got too is the fact that the teams don't have to fully disclose anything when it comes to injury reports, things like that right now in the preseason. So as we start gearing up and as we start getting closer to week 1, we'll really get a closer insight on what some of that stuff looks like. Guys, any other thoughts on some of the things that you've seen over the weekend?
Jameis Winston is the starter for the New Orleans Saints, and anyone who says different is obviously not watching football. He looked really freaking good last night, guys. Like, that year under Drew Brees in the Sean Payton scheme and working with them through this whole off season and kind of last year, but I don't really count anything that happened in the 2020 off season due to, the pandemic and everything else. But he looked good. He was reading routes. Like, he didn't force the ball. Like, he took what the defense gave him at times. And then when he had the opportunity, took his shot, and Marquez Callaway looked like a baller for at least one game, right? Like, his fantasy stock went from who's this guy to holy crap, he's my wide receiver 3. And we'll see how that shakes out in the regular season. They obviously need to fill a hole with Michael Thomas being out for, perceivably, 8 weeks at least, depending on how his ankle recovers from all the ligament surgery. But at least gave people some hope that New Orleans will still have a passing game, even with the absence of Michael Thomas.
Absolutely. So, guys, speaking of some wide receivers there, let's go ahead and hop over into some wide receiver tiers. And so, we've been kind of talking about this over the last couple of weeks, that tier-based drafting is where you need to be at when it comes to your draft. It is a way that will help you not enter that tilt mode, because anytime that you go into a draft, you will inevitably get sniped. Somebody will take your guy that you had queued up ready to go. So those tier-based drafting will help you get away from some of that. Looks like we got a comment coming in there. Peng's Picks says, all the regret for not drafting Callaway late. There's a lot of people in that same boat after watching that game last night with you, Peng.
One game.
Preseason. I don't know, dude. I don't know who else they're going to throw the ball to, right? We had that same conversation when we were talking with the Saints. So
Traquan Smith.
Right. Yeah, we've got to still see him healthy and go in there.
Yes.
But yeah, absolutely. They've got some pass catchers, but I think there's a little bit of sigh of relief after watching that game last night. So looking at it, we talked last week about the running backs and the tiers, how the running backs go and how some of this looks and breaks out. So now we're going to talk about the wide receivers. And so the way that we did this is each of the boys went through and have their rankings that we've already did, but we split those rankings into some tiers for you. And we went all the way to roughly our wide receiver 20 rank in there and split those into the tiers on how that looks. So some of us will be a little different than the others, but we're going to start with the tier 1 and 2 here. And this is how this kind of breaks out. So Alex has Hill, Diggs, Ridley, Adams, and Hopkins as his tier 1. Kevin has Adams, Hopkins, and Hill as his tier 1, and I have Hill, Adams, and Hopkins as my tier 1. So Chris, kind of looking at this, what's your thoughts as far as how these tiers break down and how do they differ from maybe what you have?
Sure. My ranks they look very similar. And when it comes to tiered rankings, it's all in the eye of the beholder, the person doing the ranks. And I love the idea of having, 4 or 5 guys in one tier: Hill, Diggs, Ridley, Adam, Hopkins. Personally, I wouldn't have Ridley in my first tier. No offense. The idea of having 3 guys, your top 3, Adams, Hopkins, Hill, is perfect for me. In terms of what I have, Devontae Adams, Hill, I have Metcalf third, maybe between, and then 4th and 5th, kind of different opinions here. Diggs and AJ Brown kind of would be there too. But again, as I said, it's all in the eye of the beholder. Again, when you're making tiers, you can put, I guess it wouldn't be, fair. It wouldn't be a tier ranker system if you put 10 players in the same tier, but there's no handbook. You can have 3 guys, you can have 5 guys, you can do whatever you please. So I don't want people to kind of, freak out right off the bat. Like, I've seen a lot of people I look up to and trust only have 3 guys in a tier, but I also respect people that have 6 guys in a tier. You do what feels right. When I rank, you're going to know when the tier breaks. You're going to know it right here in your chest, right here in your stomach. So I like what I'm seeing here. I don't mind, 5 guys in a tier, but I also don't mind 3 guys in a tier.
Right. And so that's one of those too, that the tiers for me actually separate themselves out. Like a lot of times the further down you go and you start getting, higher on those tier numbers, the more guys start getting into that tier as well. But, one of those that when you look at some of this, the guys will kind of separate themselves out and have maybe shorter tiers when you have those guys at the tippy top of a section there. So kind of going down into some tier 2, right? You got Metcalf, Jefferson, Brown, McLaurin, and Robinson for Alex. Kevin has Metcalf, Diggs, and Ridley in his tier 2. I've got Ridley, Brown, Robinson, Metcalf, and Diggs in mind. So what are your thoughts here on tier 2? Anything that you change? Any way that you kind of side a little bit there?
No, these are all fantastic. The one thing I do want to point out, I love the addition of Allen Robinson in the second tier. Allen Robinson, he's in my second tier. I don't think it's a reach, but I don't think too many people are paying attention to him. He's kind of ho-hum, does his job, kind of quarterback proof, just like Terry McLaurin in his second tier there. These guys played with some awful quarterbacks, but they still produced. In looking at what, what Terry has this season at quarterback, YOLO, Ryan Fitzpatrick. And now it looks as though Andy Dalton will start a week or two. I don't think that lasts. We all know, we all see it. Justin Fields will be that quarterback one, sooner rather than later here. So I like to have choices, right? And in all the drafts that we play in, some of them are, 14, 16. I get messages, guys playing in 32 team leagues. So I like to have choices. And I think the more like 4 or 5 guys in a tier fits me better the way I draft. Who am I to tell you, Derek, or you, Kevin, that I don't like to have 3 guys in a tier? That's what you like to do. But the way I draft, I like to pick and choose, right? And you said it before we went live, Derek, you don't want to tilt, AKA you don't want to make that panic selection. So if I have more guys in a tier that I feel comfortable with, that's what I'm going to roll with.
Awesome. So Kevin, Alex, what are your guys' thoughts here? Maybe break down some of the thought process here between your tier 1, tier 2.
So the reason, as I'm looking at this, and the reason I broke it out the way it did is just I love running backs so stinking much, and that affects my wide receiver tiers to a sense, because outside of these 6 guys, there's probably double 12 based off of last week, right? Running backs that are in kind of that same tier level that I like. Part of it's because the system, part of it's because they're, the workhorse backs that you have, and that type of situation. Derek, as you said, as I get further down into my tiers, the group grows. We'll show the slide here in a second, but my tier 3 is much larger, just because I think all of these guys have a similar path to comparable output. But as far as this goes, I will have to get really talked off a ledge for anybody to tell me Davante Adams isn't the best wide receiver for fantasy football until Aaron Rodgers retires. Hopkins and Hill are right up there. We know their target share is through the freaking roof with their teams, and Metcalf, the only thing that's holding him back is still those random Tyler Lockett big 3 touchdown games where all of a sudden Metcalf only sees 4 targets and you're wondering what the heck's going on. Diggs, a lot of people have him higher up. I really think the secondary is going to be rolling safeties over the top of Diggs this year. So it's going to suppress a little bit of his output. Still very good. He's in my top 5, but I do think that he's going to be suppressed slightly just because of coverage shifting over to them and the fact that Buffalo can't run the football.
Yeah, so I guess my tier breakdowns kind of went to, really I could have separated out my top 3, Adams in there. I'll throw Adams in there as well, my top 4. But really what it came down to me is any single one of these guys, any of these top 5, you could give me an argument that when it's all said and done at the end of the year, they are wide receiver 1. And I would believe you, no problem, no questions asked. Any single one of those guys in my tier 1 could be wide receiver 1 when it's all said and done at the end of the year. So that's why I saw that. Now, tier 2, you'd have to give me some more convincing to say like one of these guys is going to finish as wide receiver 1, but they're as 1 overall, but they're still going to finish in the top. What did I have here? 12. Like I still think that they finish in wide receiver 1 territory. And for me, as I look at the wide receivers this year, it is such an embarrassment of riches because of how pass happy the league is now, and because of the ways that some of these guys get creative. The reason, Kevin, that you said Metcalf is not in my tier 1 is because of those random Tyler Lockett games. It has nothing to do with DK Metcalf. It has everything to do with Russell Wilson's a great quarterback. He's going to find the open guy, and he's not going to force anything. And sometimes Tyler Lockett's the guy, and that's how they win football there in Seattle. Not to mention they're on their 60,000th offensive coordinator since Russell Wilson's been in the league. So there's going to be some newness there as well, which we've seen time and time again that it doesn't seem to affect them very much, but it will have an impact. So that's how I broke out these tiers, was that top 5 guys. Like I have no problem seeing any one of those 5 guys finish as wide receiver 1 overall when it's all said and done, and then break down into my second tier. And there's just so much good talent in the wide receiving core, in the NFL now that, I wouldn't be surprised if any single one of those guys snuck up into that spot either.
Absolutely. So guys, we did get the comment there. No Callaway in tier 1 from Pank's pick on the question there. So maybe if you keep seeing that going, you might have to scoot up there. You never know. We'll see how that looks and works there.
Look for the update next week, Peng's picks. Look for the update.
I like it. Alrighty, guys. So let's go ahead and talk on tier 3, tier 4. So again, where we kind of stopped these rankings was right when we got to around wide receiver 20 overall rank. Is kind of how we saw them finish there. So Alex went a little bit deeper on some of these. So you'll see his kind of stop at tier 3, whereas Kevin and I had another break in there. So for Alex on his tier 3, it was Cooper, Evans, Lamb, Moore, Jones, Godwin, Thielen, Woods, and Kupp. Kevin had his tier 3 at McLaurin, Robinson, Brown, Jefferson, Lamb, Godwin, Allen, and Evans. And my tier 3 was Lamb, McLaurin, Lockett, Allen, Moore, and Johnson. What are your thoughts here?
I might be, and again, rake me over the coals here. I have my rankings are up in front of me here. I apologize for not sharing them. I have Lockett all the way down at like wide receiver 22. Like I would prefer Cooper Kupp and Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, Thielen Woods, and DJ Moore over Lockett. It's just something about him that drives me crazy. Kevin touched on it moments ago. He's going to have 2 or 3 games where they're just insane outputs, 200-300 yards, several touchdowns, but good luck guessing which games those are. And to me, that drives me crazy. And one thing I will say, not about any of your personal rankings here. I learned, it took me a long time to learn this, but when I started ranking, it was just for me and like two dudes in my fantasy leagues. The receptionist, I gave her my rankings. People get so caught up in wanting to fit in and wanting everybody to like their rankings that they don't even believe their own process and they don't even believe their own rankings. They're putting out all this content, mainly rankings and projections, to kind of, fulfill other people's, minds and explore that. I'm telling you right now, you're going to get a lot of success if you just rank for you. As long as you can be on a broadcast like we are now, or write an article, or get in a fight, not a fight, but in a spirited conversation with someone, if you know in your heart of hearts, well, I rank this guy because this is what I believe. I saw this and this is what I did. You're going to have a better time, like the South Park episode. If you rank for other people and for other purposes, you're going to have a bad time. So I've not once ever put anybody down for their rankings because, again, it's such a delicate process. It's time consuming. I respect anybody that takes time, and to do tiers and to talk about it, it can get stressful, but it's worth it. At the end of the day, you have to do it for yourself, because if you rank for other people, it's going to get messy quick.
Right. When you, if you French fry when you should have pizza, you're going to have a bad time. So
yeah, Marsh, Darsh, you're going to have a bad time.
I love it.
And that's part of the reason I like these tiers, right? Because there's not necessarily a rank that's involved with these. And yeah, Derek, you did these off of our consensus rankings and kind of how we personally did it in our doc that we share. But that's part of the tier, right? Is I can see any one of these guys. Like my tier 3 finishes out at wide receiver 14. Like, so really, is it out of the question that any one of those guys, I believe, can finish inside the top 12 and be a wide receiver 1? Absolutely not. Some of these guys will absolutely finish there. Some might come up a bit short, and that's part of football. But I guess that's why I like the tiers, because it takes some of the fandom out, and I'm not associated with a number next to these guys.
Exactly.
When I'm looking at a draft board and building my roster, I'm looking at this group of players and then taking into account, all right, what's their offensive scheme? Do they have a new offensive coordinator? How's their offensive line been performing? Like, are they banged up, or have they been together for the last 5 years and a real cohesive unit? Does the quarterback like to sling it, or is he super conservative? Like, all those things kind of play into that, even within tiers. And so ultimately, like I said earlier, I can look at any one of these guys in a set of tiers, and the numbers are pretty close to the same. Would anybody be surprised if Mike Evans has 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, and outscores Terry McLaurin, no, I don't know that anybody would be surprised, but
No.
at the moment they're on the opposite ends of the tier break, but there's not a number. It's all the same as I'm looking at it.
I like to have wiggle room, right? That's what, options I said at the beginning of the broadcast, and I love to have wiggle room because the moment I kind of, the moment I see people plant their flags on, let's say, Kevin, we were in a spirited conversation. You said Evans is going to be better than Terry McLaurin. Now you were kind of setting ourselves up for, a nasty conversation. You planted your flag on one guy and there's no real wiggle room. But if you say they're in the same tier, people will back off and they're not going to jump down your throat. And I like that gray area. Maybe that's just the strategic DFS mind of me, but I love having wiggle room and gray area where I can kind of talk my way out of any situation possible. And I'm not, stuck to one kind of player. I'm not stuck to one mindset. And it's, not being open-minded it's an awful curse to have when you're ranking.
Absolutely. Alex, any other thoughts on the tiers?
Yeah, it's just for me when I was going through doing this tier 3 was like I feel like these guys, again, these are wide receiver 2 candidates, right? Like that's how I kind of looked at it, was that these guys, again, they could very easily pop up into wide receiver 1 territory, but to me, like these guys, firm stranglehold on wide receiver 2. Now, wide receiver 2 territory, that's that's a huge jump. That's 12 to 24, right, or 13 to 24. And that's a lot of points in between those two. But again, when it comes to wide receivers and just how I'm viewing, the league as a whole this year, I just think there's going to be a lot more passing. There's obviously been more focus on the quarterback. It is so hard to play defensive back in the NFL these days because you can't sneeze on somebody and not get flagged for it. So to me, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we're going to see big numbers out of these wide receivers. But the issue with wide receivers is you're only as good as the quarterback throwing to you, and you're only as good as the game plan allows you to be. So, there's a few guys that first tier of mine, like those guys are going to get theirs. These guys, they're going to need some consistency and some looks and, some things to go their way in order to sneak up into wide receiver 1 territory. But to me, like that's how I look at it. This tier 3, these guys are all bunched up next to each other, and I'm okay taking any one of them as my wide receiver 2.
I love it. So kind of the last thought that I've got as far as the tiers go here, right? Like, and we mentioned this a little bit, but just kind of reiterate this as far as a strategic thing, something tactical that you can carry into your draft is if you're sitting there and you're looking at your tiers and there's only 1 or 2 like running backs left in a tier and you're sitting there trying to debate between a guy and you're looking at, you're at the start of your wide receiver tier and that entire tier is there and you've only got like 2 guys left on the running back tier. Well, there's a good chance that when it comes back to you, one of those wide receivers will still be there, but it's unlikely that one of those running backs will be there. And it doesn't have to be those positional groups, but I bring that up as just kind of an example there from the standpoint that, that's one of the ways that you can help prevent some of the tilt when you're in a draft, right? Know where the board sits, know the room, and take a look at where that sits. Because if you get one of these guys that's in the same tier, there's a good chance that on average, they're going to put up roughly the same amount of points over the course of the season for you. So whereas the guy in the next tier down may not. So that's kind of one of the things that I have as far as a tip to help everybody out there and how I kind of look at that and view some of those things. Guys, any other thoughts on some of the tiers, any of the players in here, any of the breakdowns here?
In all my years playing fantasy football, I've noticed, and this, I'm not about to say anything profound. You don't have to, pull out your phones and go, oh my God, Chris is going to, no, what I'm getting at is there you go. The first, isn't it being recorded anyway? So that was a silly comment on my part. But when it comes to fantasy football drafts from scratch, not talking, picking up a keeper league or all just from scratch, dynasty, redraft, whatever, you have me personally, I have to hit home runs in the first 5 rounds, right? Maybe 6, maybe 7. So the tier system will only get you so far. I mean, if you run into rankings that tier it all the way down to, top 250 or top 300 in some of these, expensive magazines you can find at the Walgreens or Walmart, wherever it is. So I use the tier system to a certain extent after round 7, after round 8, and then right at that point, I kind of look at it like the space shuttle. The rockets take you, and then when you get so far, you're gone. You're on your own. So at a certain point in your drafts, let's say round 8 or round 10 after, you're kind of on your own, and that's when we're left to our own devices. So if you can do your own ranks or do your own, I know projections are, very tumultuous, but at a certain point, you're going to be left on your own, and you need to be prepared. And so again, I love tiered rankings. I mean, we've been talking about this for years, and people are still going by the 1, 2, 3 method, and this guy's 4, and this guy, I mean, that's kind of, old school, right? And Superflex is in now, tiered rankings are in as well now. So be mindful and be very prepared with your draft prep and what you're doing on the draft board come draft day.
Awesome. I love it. That is some great advice there. Guys, it is time for the Sports Me Spicy Take. And when we went to Sports Me, we were just asking more on some of their tips and their tricks and what the guys out there kind of utilize when it comes to some DFS. Maybe they might have a question. We've got a DFS expert among us tonight. So let's go ahead and hit up that Sports Me Spicy Take.
What up, Derek? Pangs Picks here, man. I play on FanDuels. I play Draftkings a little bit here and there, but mostly FanDuels. I like half PPR. I don't like bonuses that much. I feel like they can kind of throw things off. But if I had to say a tip is go follow some of the best players, the pro guys that give out these type of algorithms and stuff. They know what they're doing. They win for a reason. And if you're trying to take this like regular fantasy football, you're probably not going to do well.
Yeah, so I've never played DFS, I'll be honest. But if I were to, I tell you exactly what I would do. I would go talk to a couple of my buddies who are some of the best data scientists in that area, and I would ask them what to do. That simple. So that's what I would do. That's my tip and trick. Ask someone who's super smart and is an expert and has a lot of computer models.
So we got
That was fantastic. That was Pang. Nice tie. Nice tie, Pang.
That was a nice humble brag that I went to Harvard and I know a lot of data scientists.
So that's Derek over there at Sports Me. He's actually in charge of their tech over there. So he's a good dude, always chiming in and commenting, giving us some ammo for the Sports Me Spicy Take, and we love all the folks that hop on there and help us out with that. It's always a lot of fun seeing those come through. So Chris, these guys had some thoughts there, right? And so kind of, this is your area of expertise when it comes to DFS. And so any thoughts on any of the things they kind of said there, anything that kind of came to mind?
Yeah, so not a lot to unpack there, mainly about that tie Peng had on. That was fantastic. I liked it. And he had the, I forget what kind of shirt that is, where there's buttons on the collar right there. Unbelievable. That's a must if you wear a tie. It keeps the knot nice and close, and you go from there. But aside from the tie and Peng and the Harvard hat, I would say that in terms of data analysis and algorithms, right, everybody and their mother has access to an optimizer nowadays. If you're playing on FanDuel or Draftkings, or even some of the, I know Yahoo has a daily DFS thing here. You have to have an optimizer, right? But be careful which ones you use, because most of them, if not all of them, are using the same data, right? They're using the same snap percentages, rushing percentage, how long are you on the field? They're using the same thing. So if all 4 of us are using the same optimizer, we're all going to be tied at the top. We're going to split money, and it's just going to be like, okay, it is what it is. So I like to think of a case where you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And I know that's not for everybody. Not everybody's into DFS. Not everybody's into crunching numbers. And truth be told, I've always been awful at math. I had a tutor in college and I still was bad at it. So math has never been my strong suit. But when it comes to DFS and adding up numbers and fractions of fantasy points and yardage totals, it just clicks and I'm there. So when you're using an optimizer, be careful, research it, because again, most of them use the same algorithm. I know when it comes to baseball, Everybody uses the same thing. ERA, ISO. Nobody uses exit velocity. Nobody uses BVP, batter versus pitcher. Same thing with football. Nobody ever pays attention to what cornerbacks are going to be covering, what right wide receiver, what tight ends, is the middle of the field going to be kind of roaming free. These are all kind of things that you need to see. They don't pop up in an optimizer. They don't pop up in an algorithm. So it takes a certain kind of person. Maybe I'm nuts. Maybe I'm crazy. I enjoy it. That's all I do. 24/7, 365. If there's sports being played, I'm playing DFS. So do your homework with an optimizer. Do your homework with who you trust with your advice. I know I mentioned that 10 or 15 minutes ago, but as we know on social media, there's a lot of negligent advice going around. There's a lot of people just kind of putting stuff like just verbal diarrhea, just saying stuff because they think, hey, I'll be prominent. I'll be in the spotlight if I say something wild. So be careful who you trust and just do your homework. It takes 2 seconds. Again, we talked about it since the start of the show. Everything is at your fingertips now. Everything is reviewed. Everybody has something to say about one person or another. So be mindful, be vigilant, do your homework, and you'll be okay. Number one thing I would say with DFS, and then I'll leave you guys be. Been talking for 20 minutes. Is it's all about contest selection. I know guys playing since day one on FanDuel or Draftkings. They still message me, hey, I put $102 in, every weekend, and next payday I'm still putting money in. They still don't know what contests to choose. So if you're paying all this money for optimizers, you're buying lines, you're building your own, and you still don't know what contest to enter, then it's a waste. It's a wash. It's a waste. So there's levels to this, and there's things you got to do. Anybody has any questions or comments, you can DM me. I get back to everybody and anybody at Detroit Beastie. I'm sure Derek will field your questions. I'm sure Kevin or Alex will field your questions. But hey, I'm the DFS guy. Do what you will.
Gotcha. Well,
send your DFS questions to him, not me. I'm learning right along with everybody else here.
So, Chris, it's there's a ton of different platforms out there, and I know that this has been something that you have really kind of planted your flag on in the DFS space for a while now. Where do you tend to find some of the best success when it comes to the DFS side of things?
It's always been FanDuel to me, and that's just one of those things where, how can I put it where it would make sense? Let's say, like I'm born and raised in Michigan. You're either a U of M fan or you're a Michigan State fan, and how you decipher which one you're going to love is more than likely your father, your grandfather, your wife. Who knows? Same thing with FanDuel was the first DFS site I ever got acclimated for. It was challenging. I very much enjoyed it since day one. So to me, it's always about FanDuel, but I know a lot of people are the exact opposite. Everybody likes, some people like DraftKings, they hate FanDuel. Some people, and it just all, it's a muddied water. People they lose sight of it. But to me, it's FanDuel. I find everything they do to be concise. I find everything they do to be cool and collected. And when you get to DraftKings, I'm not going to put them down. Them and I aren't on the best terms right now. I'll leave that be. But I just think that FanDuel is a better DFS platform for me personally. Again, I've, as I told you about rankings, I never put anybody down for that. Never put anybody down for what platform they want to play DFS here. But to me personally, it's FanDuel.
No, very cool. I prefer FanDuel as well for the same reason. It's kind of just what I got into first. I got into FanDuel before DraftKings, and if I'm going to step into the DFS arena, that's typically where I'm spending my money and crossing my fingers for a payday.
And they are, people just assume, right? If you're a casual DFS player, heck, if you're someone like me who's been playing since day one, you would just assume that it's all even, it's all straight across the board. There is a massive difference in terms of strategy and building lineups on both sites. If you notice, FanDuel prices are absolutely more expensive than DraftKings prices. And why is that? Because they're two different formats. And I believe on NFL contests, you have 60,000 fictitious dollars. On DraftKings, I think it's only 35. So that's the disconnect, but that's fine. You have to think in a whole different way, site to site. So it is really, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy the most, the best?
Right on. So answer me this. Typically, with especially the high stakes leagues that are on these DFS sites, you need at least one, if not two, really kind of sleeper home run picks that just kind of stand out and make your lineup separate itself from the pack. So that way you're not tying with 6 other people who used the same algorithm to generate a lineup. So when you're going through that, I guess, can you give some insight on how do you kind of find those sleepers? Like, what's something that you look for and kind of hammer in on of, this is my guy this week who's going to set me apart, and if this goes the way I think it is, I'm going to be hitting payday.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know if you lobbed me that meatball, but that your question is the exact reason why I created bottom of the barrel, my DFS kind of value picks here. It was been very successful for me last season in terms of popularity and views and things along those lines. And we all know that the studs, you're going to want to get Patrick Mahomes in your lineup, Christian McCaffrey when he's healthy. But who are those guys that are, I believe the cheapest player on FanDuel in an NFL contest is like $4,500. To put it in perspective, Christian McCaffrey's like $10,000. Patrick Mahomes is $9,700. And I get a cheapy guy like Marquez Callaway last season for an even $4,500. So I look at, I scroll all the way down, the cheapest prices, and then I start writing stuff down. Who's on the field more, right? If I get to a point where it's Gerald Everett or Tyler Kroft in Buffalo, who sees the more snaps? Because again, if you're not on the field, you're not going to accumulate points. So it's a very simple process, but one that you kind of have to fine tune over the years. What works best for you? And to me, it's as simple as how much are you on the field, and we go from there. You have to look at quarterbacks as well. If Noah Gray, rookie tight end in Kansas City, am I going to want to put someone like him in, or am I going to want to put someone like Jordan Atkins in Detroit with Jared Goff? They're both the same price at tight end, but who sees the field more and who has the better quarterback? So there's all these determining factors. And when I say it out loud, it's like 2 + 2 = 4. It seems pretty easy, but I've noticed a lot of this process, people get lost in the shuffle. They see some shiny object, then they're off. They can't focus in long enough to say, this is the 2 players I have to compare, and this is what I need to do in terms of pricing, in terms of the offense surrounded him. And I know you're probably thinking, Chris, it's all a lot of hot air. You're not saying much, because it's really that simple when it's broken down like that. Hopefully you weren't expecting some, MC = 3 squared or whatever the theory of relativity was.
You just confirmed the needing the math tutor in college. That was well done.
Thank you.
So, and Chris, when you're doing your stuff, I know that you do a lot of like lineup based deals, like the FanDuel, things like that. One of the big things that I've kind of seen start to roll out there, some of the prop based type of DFS stuff. Is that something that you've kind of started to tackle over the last couple of years?
Yeah, you know what? I've always been into that. And anybody that's ever worked, like construction or in a factory, I've always been into those. They're tickets, right? And they look like this. And the teams are there, and each team is assigned a number. And at the bottom, you circle what team you want. You cut that off, and then you hand that portion into the bookie. And the odds on the back, 4 of them are like 1 to 35 odds, and it goes from there, right? So I've been into that since I was a little boy. My dad was born and raised on the east side of Detroit, always worked at a shop. He'd hand me a roll of these tickets and say, pick your poison and go from there. So I've been betting on sports since I was probably 8 or 9 years old. My father got me into it. Never bet away my house or anything. But now that Sportsbook is readily available, I love it. And as degenerate as this sounds, I was on the FanDuel horse racing app like a whole full year or two before the Sportsbook was made legal here in Michigan. So the Sportsbook is unbelievable, especially this time of year. Right now we're like, what are we, a week or two away from the football season? You can put all kinds of bets on Jameis Winston to win comeback player of the year, Aaron Rodgers at MVP. So there's so much stuff you can kind of dig into. And I do want to say, Don't bet. Don't get in over your head. If you don't have it to lose, don't do it. It's all meant to be fun, right? I'm not making $1,000 bets, $1 here, $1 there. DFS is a different story, but I love that FanDuel and even DraftKings has a sports book, and I'm slowly kind of, implementing that in my content, right? People, they see what you are, and then if you change in any little way, some people will leave, or some people say that you're losing, you've gone commercial, or you've sold out, Chris, and you're not the old. So it's all nonsense. So you just have to do what you enjoy the most and do what makes you happy. And I can have a steady balance of DFS and sports betting.
I like that. For the record, this morning Caesars still had the line of James Robinson rushing yards set at 650.5.
Yes.
A nice little plus 350 on that. So Daddy liked that one.
Already made.
That was one is just kind of scrolling through things like, holy crap, this is still here. It's like, okay, I'll toss some money at this. But it's so cool because a lot of the folks we talk to and generally how our show kind of is so redraft / we dabble with some of the dynasty things, but it's really about redraft and kind of in some of that week to week and everything. So it's really cool to see your mind work on the DFS side of things, because I know Alex doesn't jump into it as much as Derek and myself do, but Derek and I will be on a call or texting back and forth about some of this stuff, and you do make it sound a hell of a lot simpler than it looks when we're looking at the screen going, what do we think about this guy this week?
Right.
It's like, is this the play? Is this not the play? But it makes sense.
My thing is, it's always like, I feel like I have, I don't want to say a gift. It's not that, but and it has nothing to do with fantasy sports or DFS. A lot of people, when you're alone and you're talking to yourself or your thoughts, a lot of people don't know how to convey them, right? They starts in your brain. And how do I explain what I'm thinking to other people so that they can understand what I'm thinking? How can I make what I'm doing understandable to someone who is foreign to this whole thing? And I think I just have something in me that it's just really easy for me to kind of get out what I'm thinking and what I'm saying. And I've always preached, I like to be open and honest, make my intentions clear. So when it comes to DFS, it's insane to me that 10 years ago, I was writing all this nonsense stuff down in a notebook. Nobody was asking for my opinion. Nobody was paying me money for my bets or anything. I was just doing it because I very much enjoyed it. A lot of people, they woodwork or they build boats. I don't know. I write everything down, whether it's DFS, redraft, dynasty, my service notes at work. I write everything down. And then who knew that if you fast forward, it was setting me up to where we are now, where I have everything written down 10 years back, all the contests I've entered, all the bets that I've placed, and I'm able to kind of get that out to other people. Right. And I know, Kevin, you said, you have different people, and I know a lot of people that bet DFS, or they, that their content is kind of behind a paywall. Not everybody is willing to give up their secrets or willing to give up their tips. And again, no offense to any of those folks, but I've never understood that. If I've come before you and I've succeeded, why wouldn't I kind of go back and give you the blueprint to kind of succeed in here? Because we're all playing against the house. It's not FanDuel. It's not my money to give away. It's the house. So it's not like if we all tie at the top, it's my money. So what kind of fool would I be if I wasn't saying, well, you know what? I saw this exact situation DFS when they changed formats or they added point percent. I saw this exact same thing about 5 years ago, and I have notebooks filled of what I did and where I had success. What kind of jerk would I be if I didn't offer that to somebody else for free? Because it is, I can only keep what I have by giving it away. So helping other people, not only in DFS, but everything under the sun here, I'd be silly if I wasn't, trying to the best of my ability to help someone else succeed.
That's a very good point. And I think a lot of I'm going to say casual DFS players, because I'm not going to speak for the professionals, but how you put it, right? It's everyone against the house. It's very much the golf mentality, right? You're not playing against your buddies. You and your buddies are playing against the course. And that's what you're trying to beat. So,
or like the blackjack dealer at the casino.
Yes, absolutely. So
it's their money.
I like that analogy a lot. And you've done a very nice job of clearing up some murky waters, at least for the casual or beginner DFS players. I know I am nowhere near expert level, so I'm not going to get into even trying to formulate some sort of high level question, but I really appreciate the insight and the time and passion that you have about this.
Absolutely. Thank you. And again, nobody really ever anointed me a DFS expert. I kind of put it in my Twitter profile one day and I said, you know what? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I'll let my followers decide. Right. So if I say I'm a DFS expert and they go, yeah, I kind of trust what he's doing, then I'll leave it. If I got called out or someone said, Beastie, your content is pretty good, but I don't think you're an expert, I probably would have gotten rid of it, but I'm getting away with it so far. So let's keep it rolling.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I know one of the things that you did last year, and I've seen you do it with some of the other sports there as well, is you'll bring out some of the kind of the value plays, things like that. Is that something that we can expect to see this year?
Oh, absolutely. Bottom of the barrel is now going to be put on at Team Riser Fall. Mitch is the owner CEO over there. He reached out to me a couple months ago. He said, what would it take to get you here on our website? Right. Because at that Team Riser Fall is predominantly DFS. We're doing seasonal fantasy videos and everything, but they have so many DFS tools for every sport. PGA, Olympic swimming, last I looked. I mean, whatever you want to do DFS, you can find it at Team Riser Fall. And my number one calling card, why he wanted me at the website, was bottom of the barrel. That exact kind of, value picks, right? Last season, I've been writing that article for probably 7 or 8 years and nobody ever gave a crap about it. But then last year, for some odd reason, it picked up some steam. It garnered some success. Then week 4 or 5, almost every guy mentioned at cheap prices scored touchdowns, and word of mouth started carrying around. And here we go. It did just over 500,000 cumulative views throughout the season. So I'm looking to keep that momentum rolling into this coming season. So bottom of the barrel, without a doubt, every Tuesday afternoon, you can set your clocks by it during the NFL season.
I will. I already made the note to hop in there and check that out on Tuesdays because I really enjoyed seeing that last year, and I know that some of your picks for some of the sports that I don't necessarily dabble in have done really well for folks out there as well. So that's something that I can't wait to see and enjoy that content as it keeps coming from you.
I think, sorry to cut you off, I think the reason everybody connected with it, the plays could have been dog crap, but every blurb I write under a player, it's really nothing profound. It's not like, I want to play, TJ Hawkinson this week because I just said, you know what, TJ grew his hair out, he's got a beard, and I think he's going to score a touchdown this week. So it's all just from the gut, but it's kind of a little wit from me, and I think that's why people connected to it most, because you can find, that as you said earlier, the algorithms or like the analytics content anywhere, especially in an optimizer. But where can you go and you're like, you know what, this guy makes no sense, but that in fact kind of makes sense. So let's roll with Chris.
That's awesome. I like it. I like it a lot. Chris, is there any other, we're getting ready to move over into our home league and talk about that. We appreciate you coming on. Is there any other tips or tricks that you want to kind of leave the viewers with?
Yeah, really quick. I won't take up too much more of your time because I know Alex hasn't talked in about 30 minutes. So once I get out of here, you guys are going to be stuck with Alex for like 2 hours as he's chatting here. So I would say, for a casual DFS player, start slow. Don't get in over your head. People have like this glitz and glamour idea where if they put $10 in, they're going to hit for $1 million the first week they play. It's not all about that. You could have more luck buying a lottery scratch off ticket. So start slow and put 10 or $20 in, and don't be afraid to use it across different contests and with different players. And all that would be is kind of research and development. Plan on losing 10 or $20, but in the process, you'll have found a method that works for you. I like cash games more. I like GPPs more. I can't do that for you. Sure, I can give you advice or you can go to an optimizer, but I can't, kind of tell you what is best suited for your playing playing needs or your playing action. So start slow, sprinkle some money in all different contests and see what you get. What is the most enjoyable to you? Because I know that gets lost in translation all the time. I know everybody says it. Well, like if I'm ever out of something to say, I go, well, fantasy football should be fun, but that's legit. Same thing with DFS, right? It shouldn't be kind of like, oh, you know what? I got to wake up this morning. I got to do my notes. The morning I wake up and I feel that way, that's the moment I'm walking away. I'm already excited about tomorrow's baseball slate. So if you can kind of jump in now a week or two before the season starts, you have a couple weeks of trying things out and seeing what goes from there. So start slow. Contest selection is huge. And again, there's no amount of content or broadcasts I can do to kind of make that decision for you. That's up to you. So start slow, contest selection, and in the grand scheme of things, enjoy yourself. It's entertainment. That's the whole idea of this thing.
That is awesome advice. Very much appreciate it. Chris, thank you very much for coming on tonight. We appreciate all the knowledge that you gave us with some DFS. And guys, make sure that Tuesdays you're checking out his bottom of the barrel coming out. He's got a lot of good stuff coming over there at Team Rise or Fall, and it's the Beast from Detroit. He's at DetroitBeastie. Give him a follow. Chris, any final words for the viewers?
No, thank you so much. And I guess, I don't know if it's my calling card, but I always say this now, like individually, we can only do so much. When we come together, we can do anything under the sun. So let's help each other. Let's support each other, and we can all meet at the top.
I like it. Chris, you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks so much,
Absolutely.
man. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Chris.
Absolutely. Have a great night, brother. All right, guys. So that was Chris from the wow. That was Chris, DetroitBeastie on Twitter. Give him a follow. Absolutely. One of my favorite people on the Twitter space. He's very positive, sends a lot of really just great vibes out there. And he's always a lot of fun to have on the show. So thanks again, Chris. Guys, we have a little bit of home league to talk about. So for everybody out there listening, you may have known how we kind of got our start, things like that. But I'm gonna let Alex kind of give he gives the best story behind this podcast and the start of it. So Alex, away you go.
Sure. So for those of you like Death Dealers who's chiming in there in the comments section, welcome aboard. We've been doing this podcast now. We're going into our third NFL season, right? Third NFL season. We started this podcast up. Actually, I wasn't actually supposed to be on it. It was the brainchild of Kevin and Derek. And by happenstance, a miscommunication led to me co-hosting the first episode with Derek, which maybe don't go back and watch or listen to that.
Oh, it was fun. And any good series, the first season you gotta kind of trudge through before you really get to season 2, and then it starts to get good. As we were trying to find our space, so this all started because we've been playing in a fantasy football league for years and years and years. Something that I even joined late to the party. You guys had it going for a couple of years before I got involved in, I think 2008 was my first year joining this league. And so that's what this whole podcast started around. And so if you'll indulge us for a little bit, we're going to go back to our roots a little and talk about what we did through the first couple episodes of the podcast. And that was talk about our home league. And, we're all good friends in that league. And while we've seen some faces change, there's nothing better than messing with each other and giving each other some grief throughout the course of a fantasy football season, which I think is, it's the root cause of fantasy football is you get together with some buddies and you can you talk trash to each other. Absolutely. So when we, and that was Alex hit the nail right there on the head, right? When we first started this show, it was very much centered around the home league and going through that. And the reason we're kind of bringing that full circle again tonight is the fact that our home league draft, it will take place before we see you guys again. Where that draft takes place this Sunday. We've got some exciting stuff going on there. A little different format there because it's been a keeper league for several years. And this year we changed some platforms and Kevin can kind of go through some of that as far as, some of the changes going on and kind of the reasoning behind those. And Kevin, if you want to let everybody know.
Yeah, so through conversation with the league and just kind of over, we're going into year 13, 14, something like that with this. So is it
I think
something
it's
like
more
that?
than
I think
that.
it's more than that. You
I think
guys
it's
have been
16 or
going since
17. I think
at
it's about
least
16.
2006.
Yeah.
Yeah,
hell,
last year it was 15.
I started the damn thing and I don't even know how long we've been doing it.
It's been a long time.
But so we've had the site or the league, and we've been running it through the same site for the entire time. Kind of going through the process. Some years we were all able to get together when we were all kind of more centrally located. Most of us were, we were in college or just out of college, and we kind of centrally gathered up. Now everybody's kind of spread out all over the place. We have Alex down in Texas, our buddy David's in Louisiana. One of our friends for, I guess, a couple years of it was out in Washington, D.C. He's now back in Colorado. So we are spread out a little bit, but it's one thing that we can kind of get together with every year and talk a lot of trash. And it's something that we all enjoy. It had been a keeper league and I guess technically still is a keeper league. But what we did was after 15 seasons, we made the league vote to change platforms. And the biggest driver was, part of the user interface. A lot of us agreed that this new user interface that we're going to be doing is a little bit more conducive to combining all the things that we had into one. So we're moving off of ESPN over to Sleeper, and it killed two birds with one stone for us in the fact that we were also using GroupMe as kind of our group chat to kind of banter back and forth. The ESPN chat board didn't flow very well, and people weren't really using that. So we'd always use GroupMe because in a 12-team league, you couldn't have a group text message with 12 people. Someone was always getting left out. So joined on the GroupMe. Then, we got hooked on a Sleeper a couple years back, and as Sleepers continued to develop their interface, found that it's really user-friendly. I love the draft board on Sleeper. Like, I like seeing where these guys go. It's just something that you couldn't get from ESPN. And I like the fact that you have all the different channels with Sleeper that you can get into. And the more you dive into Sleeper, the more you can kind of get out of it as far as real-time information, because I'm getting updates from Sleeper 10, 15 minutes before ESPN releases it from Adam Schefter. Now, Schefter
Also,
does all
neither
this.
of those are sponsors.
No, but it's just being transparent, right?
Right.
I still have leagues in ESPN.
So do I.
We just moved this one over. So it is what it is. But, getting that real-time information is super nice. Like, holy crap, today, Travis Etienne had a mild foot strain. It's a Liz Frank injury, they believe. They put him on IR. He's going into surgery later this week. Now, that hit Sleeper 10 minutes before my ESPN alert came through. Both are apps. Both I have notifications sent to me, but it's that real-time thing. So it helps when you're hitting the waiver wire, when you're looking at start sit right before game time, like all those types of things. So I felt it was the group, and the group felt that it was just going to be a better interface. So long story short,
and part of it too. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No,
I thought you were done.
I can be done. I'll shut up. That's fine.
Well, I was just saying, part of it too, with the change of platform, we were doing almost like a modified dynasty in the sense that once you got a guy on your team, there was no penalty for keeping that guy on your team as a keeper. He was just on your team. So essentially, we had two keepers. Essentially, what happened was the first round of the draft was essentially the third round of the draft, because everybody already had two players on their roster and there was no penalty for anybody anywhere for it. So we were doing kind of this modified like dynasty, small scale with two players. And so when we moved, the issue that we kept running into is we'd have people, one or two people every year would kind of go in and out of the league. We'd have kind of a revolving door for some of these teams. And so they'd take over these teams that they had no say in when it came to drafting them. And we tried to do some things to make it as fair as possible and do all that stuff. But this was a good time to hit the reset button. Everybody's slate is wiped clean. There's no keepers involved. There will be penalties for keepers now, which is a more fair way of doing things. So you don't have Derek end up with Adrian Peterson on his roster for 15 years. And
I'm still bitter about that. You have to bring that one up.
And
if you're gonna get it right, it was the Lev Bell with the late pick. It was the Devonta Freeman with the super late pick. It was.
Yeah.
I've had some big winners on that one. I will pat my own back.
They stay on rosters and they don't leave unless you've got some moron who just gets rid of Alvin Kamara in the middle of his prime. But
by the way, go back and watch the first episode for Alex explaining that, if nothing else.
But those players would never come available. So this is nice now that we've got, a clean slate. We've got everybody is available to everybody. And with the change in platform, we've also had our first ever complete draft position swap in league history between two players, where they have swapped every single one of the draft picks straight up.
Yep, that did happen. So guys, kind of looking at it, right? Like this, it wouldn't be complete, us talking about our home league, without kind of going in and, calling your shot before the season even begins. So, looking at it, I'm curious to know who you guys are thinking, because we know where our draft picks are. We know where our draft position is. So kind of looking at it, who's your favorite to have the best team coming out of the draft? And Kevin, if you say yourself, I'm going to say that you got to pick somebody else.
I have to pick somebody else?
Well, you can pick yourself, but then I also want to know who your second
position,
place is then.
I'm going to pick myself. I love
You're good at 9 there.
Drafting at the back end of these drafts.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much depth and you can do so many different things. Now, this is the first with us resetting, and last year switching over to a super flex. There are some different plans of attack, right, that we wouldn't necessarily implement in years past. And with a lot of our league having not played in super flex leagues until last year, it's going to be very interesting the first couple rounds to kind of feel people out. Are they going, best player available? And, they're just going to hit hard on running backs and quarterbacks, or sorry, my hat's all screwed up and I can't fix it. Or, is it going to be running back heavy like it traditionally is in our league? So the first couple rounds are going to be interesting. So I don't have a set game plan for the first couple rounds, drafting out of the 9 hole, but based off of mock drafts and all the other drafts that I've been involved with, I have a really good feeling of who's going to be around there and feel good about my team. I like the trade as much as it annoyed me. I like the trade. I was talking to one of the guys who traded back, and he traded back from the third spot all the way to the 10th spot. And it was pre-draft, whatever. And I was talking to him about it Friday at our softball game. And he said, it really doesn't bother me. He said, the board's completely cleared. He said, there's no keepers out there. He said, there's tons of options available. And he goes, and I can now do this and get 2 players in the top 15. So I can have 2 of the top 15 players to start my roster, as opposed to 2 of the top 22 players. And for him, that the value that he saw at the beginning of the draft was beneficial enough for him to make the swap. Yeah, and again, I have been against league voting and vetoing trades for a long time, unless they're just completely bogus, asinine things. So whatever works, more power to him. He has a reason behind it. Both guys agreed to it, and off we go. So I think Kyle will have a pretty good draft. It's been a long time. So him and I haven't drafted back to back for a while. So it's going to be kind of my goal in life to just mess with him a little bit and to see how many of his picks that I can, kind of foil up. Alex, coincidentally, you're going to be right there too. Drafting in 11. So I'm going to be hammering Alex, and Derek's at the top end of the draft all by himself.
I don't mind that. And going into that, I was sitting there, and Kevin and I, you were talking. I was like, you know what? I just hope, because typically when Kevin and I enter the same draft, we end up getting to draft like back to back on, with each other more often than not. And for those of you that have listened to a few episodes, know that Kevin and I tend to draft very similarly when it comes to a draft. So inevitably, when Kevin and I are drafting back to back, he's sniping me right before I get to pick, and I'm sniping him on the way right back, and it just continues that way all throughout the draft. So I was very excited when I looked at that and went, well, I won't be on the other side of the draft. I don't necessarily have to worry about that as much.
I will say this too, with the change in platforms, the divisions got a little shaken up as well. And so previously, the three of us had always been in the same division. And that was always super annoying for me because these guys are very good at what they do when they draft. And then I would just have to kind of, eke my way through and hope to make some noise in the playoffs. But you could always guarantee that there was going to be one or two just unbelievable losses that you were going to have to suffer throughout the course of the season. But now the divisions are a little shaken up. So I'm still in a division with Kevin. Derek has found himself out of the division, but I will say that division that Derek is in has people drafting at 8, Derek's at 4, Brian's at 7, and Taylor is at 6. And that is going to be a tough division if those draft, those are pretty good draft positions right there. I think if the draft, if they all hold serve throughout the draft, that division is going to be tough.
So question coming in. So this is coming from Death Dealers, and it's how many titles do each of you have? So
I
Death
have the
Dealer,
most recent one. That's the only thing that matters.
So Death Dealer, I'm going to, and I'm going to, further kind of clarify this question. We're just going to talk titles in this league. So Kevin has the most. Kevin, how many titles do you got now?
Is it? I believe it's 5 or 6 in 15 years.
Mm-hmm. I've got 2 of those and a couple of heartbreakers in the title game on top of that. And then Alex is the most recent champion.
If it weren't for Matt Flynn.
You're welcome for that. So Alex is the current champion, and Death Dealers does clarify there that yes, it is for this league. So Kevin's got, I believe Kevin's got 6. Now that I think about it, I think you're at 6. I've got 2. Alex has 1. So out of that league, the majority of the championships are sitting here on that screen. So, but it is a lot of fun, and it's a league that we definitely all enjoy and look forward to playing in each and every year. So, guys, any other thoughts for the league? Any trash talking that needs to take place for the league members watching this?
Champ, I'll let you take the floor and call out all the contenders.
Yeah, just it's tough going into a season as a defending champion. Everybody's going to give you their best week in and week out because they want to knock off the Kings. So this is going to be a fun year. I'm actually it's kind of funny with the people that I have drafting around me is Kevin right before me. Excuse me, not Kevin, but Kevin, then Kyle, then myself, then Craig. So there's going to be a lot of text messages that are going to be flying come Sunday night. Probably a lot of profanities that we won't share with you here. But
I'll share them. I have no shame. You guys know this. Over the course of this, I have no shame letting them fly.
It's been fun. The trash talking has already started, including some of our newcomers, including my buddy Keith, who we've brought into the fray, who can dish it out with the best of everybody. So this is going to be a fun year, I think, for everybody in the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football League as we kind of go into this new era of the league, and hopefully it's going to be fun. We do not have penalties for last place. Death Dealers, thank goodness, because oh boy,
Alex has had a few of those.
Actually, no, I don't.
I'm still a proponent of the Waffle House challenge. Like out of all the
good one.
I don't need the tattoo league. Like I'm not.
No.
I know some guys. That's some for some people, and others aren't for that, and that's fine. I love the Waffle House challenge.
That's a good one.
That is one of the best last place penalties I have ever seen.
Yeah.
And I would love if our league would vote to implement that and have someone record their experience getting through Waffle House for 24 hours because
minus
those
the number
are
of waffles you eat.
Yeah. So entertaining as hell.
Yeah, no, we don't have. We did for a while to eliminate tanking in this league. We did have,
Yep.
if you won the losers bracket, because only the top, top 8 made it, and it's a 12-team league. So the bottom 4 would go play in the losers bracket, and if you won the losers bracket, then you were guaranteed the number 1 overall pick, which was essentially, again, the 3rd round because of everybody's 2 keepers.
You've
And
got a couple
I
of
won
good
that
players
a
winning
bunch.
that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I won that a bunch. I was real good in mop-up duty. So I was the best of the rest several times.
Well, and one of the other great things about kind of the way that's set up, right? Like a lot of folks, I've been in other leagues where they kind of get on that. Well, you're letting 3/4 of the league into the playoffs to play for the championship, and a lot of folks have an issue with that, where they only want 6 teams, 4 teams, something like that, where it's a very small contending crowd that gets into it. But in this league, we've seen the 8th seed win the championship as many times as we've seen the 1 seed win the championship. And oftentimes the balance actually shifted last year with Alex knocking off the number 1 seed there.
And who
which
was that
me.
number 1 seed? Oh,
Which
yeah,
was
that
me.
was you.
I'll own it.
That was you.
I lost that one. No shame here. I played good enough for a number 1 seed and then gave it away in the week 14 there. So, but
think about it this way: how much fun is it when you see, you're watching March Madness and you see the 16 giving the 1 a run for its money, and we've seen it 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever that tournament was. We saw a 16 beat a 1. Think of how much fun that is when you have somebody who has no business being in that game put up an absolute monster and knock off the number 1 seed, and then it makes the rest of the playoffs wide open.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes, it does.
And it's fun, right? And one of the other changes
Yeah.
we made this year is the championship's going to be a 2-week, right? So this is one of the things that we implemented with the NFL scheduling going out. So playoffs will still start week 1. We'll have our quarters, we'll have our semis in week 15, and then 16, 17 will be your finals. And then 18 will be the dead week, right? So we're still not going to do that. So the quarterfinals are going to be interesting, guys, because there are teams who have their bye week in week 14. So we're going to see how some folks handle this. I think the NFL did a disservice, like, to fantasy players. Not that they care a crap about us,
They
but
do, but they won't
just
ever admit it.
right. But just in a sense, like, why in the world are you going to have a team play 13 games? Sorry, it's week 14. So play 13 straight weeks and then give them a bye. Like, that's brutal for the NFL team, like whichever franchise it is, let alone it screws up part of our fantasy playoff. So it is something that it's going to be interesting that people pay attention to that. Is that something that they're looking at during draft day and thinking that far ahead of, I'm between this quarterback and this quarterback as my super flex, if you will, my second quarterback. This guy has a bye week in week 14. This guy has a bye week in week 9. Like, okay, well, I expect to get into the playoffs, so I'm going with the guy in week 9 to, try and increase my chances further down the road.
It's going to be fun.
Yep, that'll be interesting there, because there were some prominent names when it came to the to those week 14 buys. You've got Indianapolis, Miami, New England, and Philadelphia, all with buys in week 14. So it could be very, very interesting there.
There's a lot of starters for a lot of people on those rosters.
Well, and coming down to crunch time, right? Carolina has it in 13, the Packers have it in 13, and the Titans have it in 13.
Right.
As well as the Browns. So there's a lot of fantasy talent that last week of the season that, if you're not careful, could cost you a playoff berth if you're on the fringe, right? So it's something just to be mindful of. Death Dealers, thank you so much for tuning in, man. We appreciate you for stopping by. Check
out the website.
Yeah, the website, the socials, the whole shebang. But we're glad that you tuned in and listened to us ramble on here for the past hour plus.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I think the draft's going to be super interesting in our home league. Obviously, we'll give a brief recap next week. Derek, I'm going to go off script a little bit.
Okay.
Alex.
Does it have to do with a deal with a draft that we just got done doing?
It does.
Because I was going to go there too. So I love the pivot.
If you have it pulled up, we're going to pivot off the home league, and we're going to give Alex 2 anonymous teams, or you can give him 3 anonymous teams, Derek, however many you want, but just don't tell him who the owners are.
Yeah.
And Alex, I want you to tell us which team you like best heading into just a redraft season.
Okay.
All righty. So team 1, pull that one up here. All right, there it is. Team 1 has the team of Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold as your quarterbacks, Chris Carson, Raheem Mostert, Damian Harris as your running back, Robert Woods, Amari Cooper, Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Jacoby Myers, and Terrence Marshall as the wide receivers, and then Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Hunter Henry as the tight ends. So that is team 1. Team 2 is Ryan Tannehill, Jalen Hurts, Cam Newton as the quarterbacks, Ezekiel Elliott, Austin Eckler, James Robinson, J.D. McKissick, Naheem Hines for the running backs, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Kenny Golladay, Antonio Brown as the wide receivers, and Dallas Goedert and Rob Gronkowski as the tight end. And then looking at team 3, come here, team 3. Team 3 has Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers as your QBs, Derrick Henry, Devin Singletary, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams as the running backs. Antonio Brown, Curtis Samuel, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle.
Antonio Brown can't be on the same team.
I'm sorry, AJ Brown. AJ Brown, my bad. AJ Brown, Curtis Samuel, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Amari St. Brown as the wide receivers, and Jonnu Smith and Logan Thomas as the tight ends.
I like the quarterbacks from team 3 better, but overall, team 2.
Okay. So this is a charity.
This was a super flex?
It is a super flex.
Super flex and a tight end premium. We should have told you that.
And it's a running back.
And it's a running back reception premium.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I'll still take team 2, I think.
All right. Well, team 2 was your boys here. Kevin and I drafted that one in a charity league that we're doing. And those guys did a great job putting that on there. But yeah, we just had to get another opinion there, kind of a blind player comparison on what you thought of the team makeup there. So I'm glad to see that that you liked what your boys picked.
I had a feeling Kevin had a hand in team 2 because there was 9,000 running backs on that roster.
We didn't know. Actually, we didn't go heavy running back. We went.
Week 7 is going to be tough, but
in the week 2, and then hell, we didn't pick up Robinson until 6 or 7. 7. So we went 5 rounds without a running back.
Yeah, and that value shoots way up now.
All 3 of those guys, Zeke, Eckler, and Robinson, all have week 7 buys.
Ooh, week 7 is going to be tough.
That was the only reason we picked up McKissick and Hines is because we went, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I start pounding Derek. We're like in round 12 or 13, something like that. And I'm texting Derek. I was like, dude, we need to look running back. He goes, but I like, Pittman was still on the board at that time. That was a guy that we kept tossing back and forth because we all like Michael Pittman. He goes, yeah, but Pittman's out there. I was like, dude, you need to look at this. Like all of our buys are on week 7. Like we have to put up more than just a goose egg. He goes, oh, crap, you're right. Okay, running back it is. Which one of these guys do we need to reach for?
Because and Kevin and I were talking earlier today too, right? And so it's one of those that I told Kevin something that's kind of how I view some of these things and why I don't even consider bye weeks when I'm drafting a player. I might in our home league because if I draft a player in week 14, I am notoriously bad in week 14. Yeah, I have a really good job of getting to number 1 seed and then losing in the first round. So that's something that'll definitely be on my radar. But I don't look at bye weeks on this, and it's a very simple reason. I have gone undefeated in seasons and gotten to championship games, and I've yet to ever win a league championship that I was undefeated in. I've won many, many, many where I lost 1 or 2 games. So inevitably, when I go through that, I am just going to put the best players that I feel is going to build the best roster construction on that. and you're going to lose one or two anyway. Is kind of how I have that mindset. I might as well pick that week that loss is going to come and put up the best fighting chance on every other week that I can. So that's kind of just how my thought process worked on that one. But that's one.
Damn it. The reason this popped up is the gracious host of this charity league did everybody a kind of cool solid. Like, he went through, there were 2 divisions of 12 teams, and he's going through and breaking down all these rosters and ranking them, 1 through 24 based off of the analytics that he's looking at. Some of it's, personal favoritism towards players or what have you, which is all fine, well and good. But, he started comparing these teams, and Derek and I were a little disheartened about where our ranking was with that team. And so now we're on a warpath. And it's not so much to prove him wrong, but it's more so just to dominate every single possible week in that league. So that way we can, go back and go, that's where you had us, huh? That's where you had us, huh? Like, just to kind of trash talk it a little bit. Because
for the record, where did he rank you?
We were ranked 10th out of 24 teams.
Yikes. Okay.
So we're playing, and to be fair, we are playing up against, I don't know that there's anybody out there that isn't a fantasy analyst, doesn't have a podcast, or doesn't write, or there is a lot of really, really good competitors in that league.
They're not scrubs. These guys aren't scrubs.
This is a very high level competition that we're playing against. So, they've done a fantastic job. It's probably one of the funnest, or it's one of the more fun charity events that we've done. Just kind of how they've put it on. They've done a fantastic job with it. So kudos to them. But that was one of those that I had to get an outside opinion there. And it was kind of interesting, Kevin. I don't know if you saw that when we first started drafting. This was how we started off our first 6 rounds: double running back, double quarterback, double wide receiver. So it was just kind of an interesting breakdown how it went, because it was something so different than what Kevin and I typically will do.
Yeah, and it wasn't intentional, but it was just, again, reading the room.
Yeah,
running backs pushed heavy early, and so that allowed us to kind of get those quarterbacks late. And Derek and I were texting, so we picked up Tannehill in the 3rd. We wanted Brady. Brady went 1 pick before us, so we went with Tannehill, which was fine. And then it came back around, and Derek and I were going back and forth. I was like, dude, the quarterback run's coming. I was like, look at all these guys that just don't have quarterbacks. Do we want a guy who's just middle of the road and kind of be taking flyers and forced to take that 3rd quarterback earlier than probably what we want to? Or, do we just want to take the 2nd quarterback now and feel comfortable with it? And we kind of landed on the fact of, we like Jalen Hurts enough, and we like him as that 2nd quarterback. There's a lot of rushing upside. And so that's where we ended up taking it and running with that one. So we were really happy with it. And then we got Mike Evans in the 5th, and DJ Moore in the 6th. I mean, we were really happy with how this played out. And then we saw the rankings come out today, and both of us went, ugh, like, really? That's where we're going. So
that's all right. It's
fun.
And so it's all for a good cause, and it's all for a lot of fun. So it'll be a blast to go through on that one. But guys, I think that's going to kind of bring us to the end of this thing. Do we have any final thoughts for the listeners or the viewers?
Can't wait to embarrass you all on the drive. No, I'm probably gonna be kicking myself after Sunday, and I'm sure we'll have the text messages flying.
Kevin, what round is Alex Tilton?
What round?
It happens. It happens when I draft Carson Wentz in like the 3rd round. That's when the tilt goes on.
I think it's going to be an odd round.
Right.
It's going to be an odd round.
Keep in mind, I'm towards the back half of the draft.
That's why it's going to be an odd.
That's why it's going to be an odd round, because it's going to be me, then Kyle, and then you. And I think the 2 of us are probably intentionally, unintentionally, whatever. Obviously, us doing the show together and knowing, like, kind of like the mock that we did, right? Like, some of it was just completely unintentional. It's just me filling out the best lineup I could and just putting out there. You're going to be on tilt pretty early.
There's going to be a lot of sniping my dudes. That
I'm sure that I'm just going to end up taking guys. Alex goes, God dang it, I wanted that guy.
Yeah.
So,
or you or Kyle does it, and then Craig follows it right back up. So there's going to be a couple. I'm not really pleased as the GIF or GIF that I sent after the draft order came out.
Honestly, you and I are drafting pretty close to where we would have been drafting anyway.
Yeah,
because
true.
I just where our finish was, right? So you won, so you're one pick ahead of where you would have been, and I think I finished third last year.
Yeah, so you would have been drafting right where you are anyway.
So I would have been picking at 10 instead of 9. So each of us kind of moved up a slot, but honestly, we're in the same position. Derek's the one who made out with it. He went from, having to pick
been six to 4.
Yeah. So he made out. So, which is all good. It'll be fun. We'll do the recap. Best of luck to everybody in the league, and we'll talk some trash here this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So, well, guys, I do believe that that's going to take us down to the end of this. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching this, and then also indulging us in a lot of home league talk. Not something that we normally dive that deep into, but it's always a lot of fun to go back and reminisce and kind of hit our roots and how this whole thing started. So thank you for indulging us on that one. Make sure that you're hitting us up on the socials. We're Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Good Old Boys FF. We do the live stream on Twitch, on Twitter, and on YouTube. You can make sure you're hopping onto YouTube, hitting that subscribe button, the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Make sure you do that. Click that bell for all the notifications to get that. Website's got all sorts of great stuff. goodoldboysff.com. For Kevin and Alex, I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe.